The structures of our world, banking system, government systems, things that we think that we actually need are in fact cages that are preventing us from living in freedom. The hardest thing to do is to just let ourselves be free. We have to let ourselves be fully in our truth, and we have to allow others to do the same. That freedom is what then generates the new field of the new earth, which comes from inside of us. Now I channel the mother of creation. She is the mother of all souls. She says, now you will remember me, which is her energy, the energy of unity, of bringing things back together again, back into unity and balance. That's her. So that is why she's back now, is because she says this is the moment of integration.
Hey everyone, Guy here. My beautiful guest today is Anne Tucker, and it was the first time I met Anne and had her on the show, and it was really great to connect. She's a channeler, but I tend to not really dive into channeling per se on the podcast. I'm much more interested in actually the message behind it and having a conversation, and of course getting to know Anne today. But we dive into obviously a hot topic that seems to be happening across especially my channel, and you'll see coming up, is about reality at the moment and this divide, this split, and how the energies are shifting on the planet. So I wanted to get Anne's perspective to have this conversation today, and she definitely leads into about the structures that we depend on are acting like actually cages, and the reversals that is happening and underway at this moment. It's a really interesting conversation. I'd love to hear your perspectives, and this whole concept of the divine mother energy now, feminine energy, is really starting to come back into play on the planet right now. So please let me know what you think in the comments below. It's always wonderful to connect. It's very easy to be passive in watching these channels and just flick on to the next, I know, but a lot of love and effort goes into getting this content out every week, and it's wonderful to hear from you where you are in the world and if they're making a difference in your life. So it's always nice to hear that. As always, there's links below from our resources as well. We're having incredible results in our online mentorship programs that we run. We create and hold space every month. I don't mention it much on the podcast, but I should probably. But also we're going to be in Bali for 5 days, mastering your inner mystic as well, at the end of June this year, which will more than likely sell out as our 31 previous retreats have as well. Anyway, it's all there. Hopefully I'll get to meet you somewhere in person. Let me know what you think of this episode with Anne and this conversation, and I will catch you soon. Much love. Anne, welcome to the podcast. So lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So great to meet you too. Appreciate the time together.
Yeah, me too. Me too. As always, talking off air for 5-10 minutes first. So it's like let's do this. My first question I always love to ask, like, because we spoke off air, like if you were at an intimate dinner party or dinner table, you know, with a group of people and strangers, and somebody asked you what you did for a living, how would you respond?
I love that question because it's such a thing. Like one of my wounds I had to heal this time around, this life, was the fear of being seen. And so, like, I was that little girl that when cars drove by the front of my house, I would hide in the bushes. You know, I was very shy. And so here I am, loud and proud on YouTube, doing my thing. So how did I get from there to there, right? And it was progression. But yeah, in the beginning, I would always describe it, oh, because I used to be in the corporate world. Like I had a very conventional life, a successful conventional life that I left behind in order to do this, which everybody is like, you'll never make a living doing that. So it was, yeah. And I did lose friendships in the process, people, and I lost a whole business. So it was a big decision to go down this path. But when you're feeling that call, you can't avoid it. It's just too all consuming. So in the beginning, I would just say, oh, I was a consultant, you know what I mean? And then I kind of went into, I would kind of describe it to people like, I'm a healer. Have you ever heard of Reiki? Yeah, because a lot of people know what that is. These days, I'm flat out. I channel angels. I channel the mother creation. Yes, I'm a healer. Like I even with my accountant, I go in. It was so funny. I met with these two guys, a new accounting company, and I tell them, "Yep, this is what I do." And I had a friend who actually worked in their office, and these very, guys never heard anything about this kind of stuff. After I left, they were both in their offices checking out my YouTube channel. I was like, score.
That's gold. That's gold. It's interesting, isn't it? I had actually issues in probably inviting somebody that spoke openly like yourself on to my podcast at first, talking about the very things that we'll be talking about today.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, Welshman, just on
Yeah.
here talking about this stuff. It's kind of strange, but as I've tuned into the energy more and more, especially through facilitating, and you start to work with non-physical, like there's a direct correlation and relationship that starts to happen. It becomes undeniable,
Yeah.
and you just kind of go, well, what the
Yeah.
heck? But
Yeah.
what do you think it is about being unseen?
Like, what was that wound all about?
Yeah, and for people, because that is so common.
Yeah, yeah. I think it comes from a bunch of different I actually specifically know the root of mine because I literally I worked very arduously on my healing for like more than a decade, almost 2 decades, constantly working on every single trigger, what's coming up. And so through that process, I've been and now just in the last year, if you think of each of the, especially your primary mother and father wound as like a thread that goes through your whole life and it just shows up like in the worst places, like in every relationship and in, you know what I mean, every boss or whatever, you just keep finding this ugly thing. I finally found like the tail of it. And I finally found the end piece of it and resolved both my mother and father wound in the past year. So now I can confidently say I know where mine came from. And mine was from in my it literally started in utero. It started when I was in the womb. And there was the feeling at the time of my birth, my parents were going through a very rough time in their relationship and they were in the process of splitting. And my dad wasn't there very much. And I had the feeling as an infant that if my dad wasn't around, we wouldn't be okay. And I'm sure I was picking up my mom's fear and everything like that. How are we going to support ourselves? Because she had me plus my brother who was a little older. So as an infant, I felt that if my dad wasn't around, we wouldn't be safe. So it related to my safety. And I felt that I had to have no wants. I had to be like as make it as easy as possible so that he wouldn't leave. Right. I had to like repress all of my needs, be a super, like not cry, not fuss, whatever, so that we would be okay. And so it came from this thing of like, and then that played out in relationships over the course of my life where I would have a really hard time speaking my truth, a really hard time. And so I call it self abandonment, and I think people do it for different reasons and then even worse, I think our culture, and I'm sure like it's not just in the US, I mean, many I think well, everywhere that I can know of, many cultures reward us for self-sacrificing. They reward us like as a little girl, I was always told, "Oh, wow, you're such a diplomat, that's such a wonderful quality." And I was praised for the ways that I would abandon myself, for being so easygoing, for never having any problems, you know. And I think that's something people can relate to. And I think a lot of spiritual, like people who are attracted to this field, to this work, it's their old souls. This is the pathway of the old soul. And we come in, regardless of what our plans are for our life, we come in, I think, having a depth of knowing about ourselves that we feel that we can handle more. We feel like we can handle if there's emotional stuff going on, if there's difficulty going on, we just, well, you know what? I'll take that. I'll take it from myself because I know I can handle it and I'll create harmony around me. And that's that pathway of self-abandoning. And I had to slowly learn to take ownership of what my needs are. And I had to reframe my understanding of what it was to be good. That it's not good if I am in fact I had to reframe it as being untruthful. I had to take it away from being a good thing and see it as being a not honest thing. And that really helped me to heal the wound, to see that when I say what I'm feeling, that's actually me investing in the relationship. That's actually me showing up. And if I create waves, I got to create those waves because that's me showing up in my honesty. That's me investing myself into the relationship. And if I don't do that, the relationship's not successful. So it was really a restructuring of all of the cultural programming, of the fear, enormous fear around doing that in the beginning, right? So it was a multi-layered process I had to go through, which is yeah. And I am a healer. That I help other people do that to unwind because it's different for all of us. But unwinding it is a thing. It takes time, but the freedom that comes from it, incredible, incredible. I will tell you that I'm happier. Yeah, happier. There's less
Mm.
resistance in my life, more peace in my life than there's ever been.
I know the feeling, but In some ways, though, at the same time, the struggle is real when
Yeah,
you're leaning into this. You know, it is not moonbeams and rainbows at the same time. It can, you know, be
it's
really
brutal.
challenging. Yeah.
It's brutal. Yeah.
Was there like any kind of knowing or sense or experiences from a young age to know that you had to go down this path, or were you kind of like bumped along until you started to get it?
It was I was raised in a family that had no religion of any kind. I had my parents had divorced, they both remarried. All 4 of them were raised in different faith traditions, so consequently, there was no faith tradition. And my parents were very especially my mom was very, very intellectual. So if anything, there was kind of like anybody who was into religion was kinda looked down on, like that was a cult, you know? Like all religion was considered so it was very my household growing up, there was no space for any of this, but I did as a little kid, I saw and every we had one TV, you know, in the room and the whole and I had a huge family because we had a blended family, all these kids. And so 60 Minutes was a show everyone could agree on, and there was a show where they were talking about ESP, and they were showing people doing flashcards and, you know, can you read? And I had this like, I can do that. I had it was like, and I, you know, and I tried it. I tried testing myself and I couldn't, but I just knew there was some part of me like, I know I can do that. And, a couple other influences like that where I just had this deep knowing, but it didn't and I would have moments, you know, moments where I would be like, it was that déjà vu or whatever, but it didn't really come in until I had it was after my first divorce. My first divorce was my moment that I had to kind of shatter everything in my life. And it was through the process of everything being kind of broken apart into tiny pieces that I then had to question everything, and that opened the doorway to I started having these sort of crazy, like truly crazy psychic experiences. And then that led me down the path of like quitting my job and doing, you know, like I'm going to be a healer and like going crazy as people would say in the very best way.
Yeah, can you give us an example? Like what
Yeah.
comes to yeah, what comes to
Oh,
mind?
okay. So I mean there were so many, but like one was I had just gone to a festival, where it a and I had met some friends there. It was kinda like down in Costa Rica. I'd met some friends. Had gotten home, and I thought about one of them, and all of a sudden, I popped into her body. And I was looking out of her eyes. I could see the
Whoa.
TV show. She was on an airplane. I could see the show, like the actor that was in the movie she was watching. She looked at this direction. She looked at this lady's sandals. I could see the sandals. Like freaked me out. Immediately popped back into my own body. And I send her a text like, "Are you on an airplane? Like, where are you right now?" Everything was 100% confirmed. And then I thought, wow, this is really a bizarre, like bilocation,
Mm.
strange phenomenon. So then I started trying to practice it where I would make an appointment with a friend and say, okay, tomorrow at 11, I'm going to try to do
Yeah.
this and see what happens. And the second person I did it with, I knew that she was going to be at a hotel at a conference. And I tried 11 o'clock. I went into her, I tried to look through her eyes, but I couldn't see anything, but I could feel. And I could feel on her legs. It felt like she had, like, I imagined that she was sitting underneath a tablecloth because I could feel multiple layers of fabric on her legs. So I could feel that very clearly. There was a couple sensations that I had that were very distinct, but no vision. So I texted her. I'm like, yeah, I don't think it worked. I couldn't see anything at 11. And she sends back a text and she says, at 11 o'clock, we were blindfolded because we were doing a meditation and I was cold. So I had my scarf on my lap. And that was the texture that I felt the 2 layers of fabric on her legs. So 100% accurate. So it ended up like I was like, why? Like, why? What does this mean? Why is this happening? And there was, of course, multiple layers to it, but it ended up being part of my healing modality in the beginning. In the beginning, I would move I would be like a gateway into another person's physical body where the angels could move through me and heal from the inside. So it was and I could feel the cool thing about it is I could feel when an energy would release, like, it's like a whoosh, it was like it came
Mm.
out of my own body, so that was cool. I don't do it that way anymore, but in the beginning, that was sort of a doorway to a way of working.
Moving that. What does heal mean to you? Like how do you look at the look at
Yeah,
it?
it's I'm so you know, I'm glad you asked because so many people like, when I first started on my journey, I hated the word healing because
Mm.
I thought it implied that, like, there was something broken, and I was like, "Is anything broken about me? You know, why do I need healing?" And I came to understand that it's not about like it is an integration. So if you think about every part of yourself, every part of your life, each moment, especially the highs and the lows, like that they each can sort of break apart and become like a separate self. Like we talk about our inner child, you know, that we think of our inner child as this sort of other person. Well, think about if there's moments in your life that were particularly traumatic. So for me, it would have been that, you know, those moments in the womb where, you know, I had these feelings, these fears about abandonment and all this kind of stuff. That would think of that as like an isolated self, like a part of yourself. And that piece of myself was too painful, was too difficult for me to face. So I would push it down and push it down and push it down and push it down. Healing is the process of integrating all those lost or those forgotten or repressed parts of ourself. And the idea is imagine that each of us is like a big open pipe through which divine source light flows, right? And every moment of ourself, every piece of ourself that we don't like or that we wish was different or that we try not to experience are like areas of resistance inside that pipe, blocking the flow of our light. And as we heal, we integrate each of those pieces into the whole, opening up the flow so that more and more light can come through. And in a nutshell, that's it. It's really about integration of all parts of you in a way that takes away all judgment. It's where we find peace with who we are. It doesn't mean we're perfect, but we stop resisting who we are and we come into a place of peace with who we are. And that allows us to become more in flow. And over time, we get brighter and brighter.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
What why do you think it is? Because what you clearly said in such a short space of time is that by going inward, it allows us to connect more and more to the divine. Ultimately,
Yes.
that letting that flow
Yes.
through. But we're so conditioned to look outside of ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a fascinating question. So, one of the thoughts I had is that before we incarnate, like when we're on the other side, we are one with everything. So when you think about yourself before you come into a physical body, if you're just a point of consciousness and you are out in the ether connected to everything, your interrelationship with everything is total. Where if you want to connect to another being, you literally merge with them and you experience in the same way that I would blend with another person, I would go into their body. On the other side, we can meld with someone to the point of truly knowing them. So there's this the idea that we are on the inside and they are on the outside doesn't exist on the other side. And then we come into a human body and all of a sudden we're cut off from all of that. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden it's just us and we can't feel and we and it's like this vague other that's out there. And I think we are continuing to look out to say where is that connection that I'm missing, and we have to relearn that the only doorway to get back to that experience of total connection is through the one piece of us that is still connected, which is the divine spark inside of our heart. And that is the only doorway we left open to get back to that state of unity.
Do you feel then that separation is intentional? Like,
Oh, yeah.
what do you, I mean, that's where I feel too, but like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it or how you look at it. And in that, almost that we have to burrow in further and further into the 3D separation, physical aspects of our life to get to a point where we start to return back to ourselves. I mean,
Yes.
how do you
Yeah, I
see that setup
absolutely do.
playing out? Yeah.
I think that is actually the model of growth that humans and humanity is experiencing. That there's lots of different ways an organism can grow. Like for example, plants grow. They grow like grass grows, always from the root, whereas tomatoes, an indeterminate tomato grows always from the tip. Like we have different models of growth. Humans, I think of our structure of growth like if you've ever seen a jellyfish swim, where it expands out and fills with water and then whoosh, it pushes water out and it goes forward. That's what I think our pattern of growth is like, where we expand out into separation. We separate, we separate, we separate, we separate. And then all of a sudden we integrate and we propel ourselves forward by integrating everything we learn through that process of separation. So I think that very intentional, and I think it's how the universe grows. So I think it's not at all a mistake. And I think right now, at the state of consciousness we're in, where we're getting ready to move into the higher state of consciousness, I think this is the turning point. I think this is where we have reached. It's sort of like if you think of everything as a breath. And if you breathe in, as much as you can, we're separating, expanding our body to hold as much air. We're putting as much space as we can between ourselves, right? Expanding, expanding. And we get to a point where we just can't expand anymore. There's just no more room. That's the point that we are at in so many ways, right, on earth right now. And so then finally, we will relax and in that process integrate and come back into unity and move into the next higher state of consciousness.
Hmm. No, absolutely. I love the jellyfish analogy. Yeah, that's exactly it. So, with your channeling, did that just come naturally through your own inward healing journey? Was it just like some, oh, what's this? This is coming, or were you sort of intentionally starting to connect? Like, how did that start to come about?
Yeah, it came in stages. So in the beginning, my channeling was I was mostly clear. It started because with clairvoyance, that was the beginning. And the way I first discovered I could do it, as I'd heard about channeling, I wanted to learn about channeling. I went to several channeling workshops. And on one of the breaks, when I was at a channeling workshop, we had a break and I sat on the, it was at Esalen, this gorgeous place on the Big Sur in California, where it's just like this insane view of the ocean. It's incredible. And I was sitting out on the patio there with a bunch of people I had just met, knew very little about. And so we decided to try to channel for one another. But we decided to try to channel for things that we would were that the other person could confirm to tell us if we were actually, rather than saying like you were the Queen of Sheba in a past life, it would be like channel and tell me about my partner, right? So that was the first one. And the woman was like, tell me about my partner. And I saw him in my mind's eye standing next to her pointing at his tennis shoes, and he had this old pair of tennis shoes on, like old Nikes or whatever. And I told her what I saw and she laughed and she said, "Yeah, my partner has a collection of 250 pairs of vintage tennis shoes." And blew my mind. And that was my first realization that there was something to this. And that then grew as I started practicing and I started working as a healer. I had clairsentience, claircognizance. I would see things, feel things, know things. I would even smell things, if you could believe it. But then one day, and it was very, very specific, very clear. Then one day I was sitting out. This was when I had left the corporate world. I was working full time as a healer. I had a whole roster of clients and I sat out to meditate one day. And then, and normally when I would work with my clients, I would sort of move into the client's body, and then my guides, my angels would move in behind me and come through, and that was how it worked. This time, I sat down to meditate. The minute I closed my eyes, it felt like someone sat on me, like my guides. They like literally there was so much pressure right here and right here that it was like I could physically barely breathe. It was like and it was the weirdest feeling and I felt like my guides were sitting on me. I'm like, "What are you doing? Like if you're trying to come in, like come in already. Like what's happening?" And I didn't understand it, and that went on for literally 6 months. Every single time I sat down to meditate, the minute I closed my eyes, they would sit on me. And I couldn't make any sense out of it until finally one day it dawned on me they weren't trying to come in, they were trying to lift me up. And what I was feeling was the pressure differential, just like if you go to the bottom of a swimming pool, how the pressure presses against your ears. That's the kind of pressure I was feeling, and it was the pressure between my vibration and their vibration. And so as soon as I realized that, my crown opened up and zoop, I went up. And all of a sudden I see myself through my clairvoyance. I see myself in a space and I'm surrounded by angels. And they're standing there looking at me with this lovely smile. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, this is so incredible. Like, what's happening? And then they didn't say anything. They literally just sat there and smiled at me. And I'm trying to talk to them and nothing. Like they're not saying a word. And this went on for another 6 months, where every single time I sat down to meditate, crown open, up I go, and there they are. And I tell you, I tried everything. I tried, can we pantomime? How about if you write on a tablet? How about if I tried everything. And they were just waiting for me to figure it out. I think it was important that I figure it out for myself. And so after about another 6 months, I realized I tried something new, which is that I went up and then rather than going up all the way, I waited till I got there and then I kind of brought a little bit of myself back down and I had a piece of paper, a notepad out with a pen, and I kept my eyes closed so I could stay focused on being up there, but I had just enough down here so it was like it came down through my arm. And then and as soon as I did that, it was like a pipe opened and words started coming through one at a time. And every word that came through, I'd write, but I couldn't make sense of it. It would be like word, 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 word. If I stopped writing, the words would just stick in the tunnel and wait. And so then I would just another word, word. So I kept going till I had like half a page of words. And then I stopped and I thought, well, that didn't make any sense. I don't think that was working. Like, was I imagining that? Because that was really like I did in my mind as it was coming through, it was nonsensical. I stopped and read it, and it was not only did it make sense, but it was profound. And I realized, okay, this is the way to do it. Go up and bring a piece of myself back down. So then I kept communicating with them like that for a little while, and then they said, try dictating. They said, and so I bought dictation software and I tried it that way, and I was off to the races. And I've been a trance channel ever since.
Wow. So could you, like, when you go up, did you feel them? Could you see them? Like, what did they look
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. I mean, like, so they can manifest an appearance for us, and often it's an appearance that makes us most comfortable or what we expect. So, but I've seen them at different times. I think probably the time, and I see them in different ways at different times. Sometimes I'll see them like when I'm working with them, they'll come in very close and they'll show me just like a wing or like this kind of thing. But when that moment when I went up, I saw them all standing around me and they look like angels, white with robes, and you know what I mean? But that's what my mind would expect. But at times, as the relationship deepened, they would sometimes I would see them as a column of light, a very distinct, very precise column of light that had almost like a geometric quality to it, with like if you turned it ever so slightly, you'd see a geometric face in it. So they look different at different times.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it kind of depends. I've had dreams of them, and now I channel the mother of creation. So that's new. The angels, so I channel the angels pretty much full time. Occasionally Yeshua pops in, occasionally God pops in. Once an elf popped in, which was very crazy, but mostly angels. And then about a year and a half ago, I started having dreams about this other being who was trying to communicate with me. But I was really scared because her energy was super huge, and it just felt overwhelming to me. It just felt like, and it didn't feel angelic. I knew it wasn't an angel, so that scared me because I'm like, if you're not an angel, what are you? But I had dream after dream where it was clearly a feminine energy and she was trying to, and then the angels finally told me that the whole point of me channeling them was that they were safeguarding my connection with her, and then who she was, that she's the mother of creation. She is the mother of all souls.
Wow. Okay. I want to go on from the side note from it because I really want to pick up on that dialogue as well. But how did, and this is part of the personal question for me because I always like to ask people like yourself, but your nervous system
Yeah.
and as energy increases, because what I've experienced over the years now, I've been space holding for about 7 years, and thousands of people have come through our events, no
Yeah.
exaggeration. And each time I hold space, whether it be in a healing circle or a meditation, that energy wants to increase. And it
Yeah.
always pushes up against, the parts of yourself that are ready to move. And over
Yes.
time, sometimes that energy can be too big sometimes, and you come out and you just feel fried. And
Yes.
like
Yes.
it's gone through an electric cable, but the electric cable just wasn't ready to hold that amount of voltage yet, or something like that. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
So I've always been, I think, might be my health and fitness background as well, but always kind of gone into the self-inquiry. Well, what is happening here? How can I do this better, and how can I be to the point where it's just flowing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would be nirvana, but I haven't achieved that quite yet. But yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
curious from your perspective, what did you experience on that
Yeah,
journey?
same. That in the beginning, when the angels first came in, it was physically painful for me. That it felt like a helmet, a super tight helmet that came over me,
Hmm.
that came down to about here, and like just fit over me, and it felt like I was in a squeeze box, and it just squoze and squoze, and I could only hold the connection for 10, 15 minutes in the beginning because it would just be so physically uncomfortable. And then I slowly got used to it, and it was, gradually, and then I got very clear instructions about things I could do that would raise my vibration to make it easier, so that it's almost like they're up here and we're down here, and if we can just stretch and bridge that distance a little bit more, it's then we can meet in the middle and it's a lot easier. So I went fully vegan, gluten-free for like 15 years, and that made a huge a difference. Turns out that I didn't digest dairy well. I didn't digest, and I had learning about why I brought that in. As part of my healing, I finally get to the source of when I brought in that intolerance and why, which was fascinating, which is now healed. Woohoo! But 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 so diet, I also
Mm.
moved out. I used to be a very like urban suburban girl, and I moved out to the country and I grow all my own vegetables. The angel steered me to a very specific and not that everybody has to do this. I'm on the trans channel diet. It's very specific for trans channeling, which is you have to be as clear like otherwise like it hurts. If you're going to do it, you got to open up all the channels. So I grow all my own vegetables. I live in a property where the water here is literally the best water in Washington state. I had the water company tell me that is that we get our water from a well right up the street. They don't even treat it. It just comes straight to my house. And so it's these environmental factors. But there was a time like where so the angels as they were working with me and trying to grow, always stretching me, like stretching my capacity, trying to get me to hold more energy so that I would be ready to channel mother creation. So every time I got comfortable where I felt like I was good at something, like when I finally learned how to be a healer and I had my clients and I felt like, hey, I got this down. I know how to do a session. Like I'm crushing it. This is awesome. And then they were like, they came in and they're like, no more one-on-one sessions. Like, stop doing no more, you're done. And I was like, oh, because that was like, I had children. I'm like, this is how I make a living. What am I going to do? And they were like, stop and we'll tell you later, but stop, no more. And then they had me start doing this more intensive work, deeper work with individuals. And they kind of pushed me along at every stage, helping me to go into like almost like opening up my channels, making the channeling longer, all these things, getting me more and more accustomed to it so that it would be easier for me in the long run. And that was you build up tolerance, you build up that, and then the other huge thing was my own healing. Is that I wouldn't have been
Mm.
able to channel the mother of creation until after I had to totally clear my heart chakra. And I had dream after dream where I had dreams where I was sweeping the dust bunnies out of the garage, and like you're getting all the last little things out of you got it like every little thing. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring her in until that was done. So that just by itself was a multi-year project of self-healing. So, but I will tell you that one time they told me, as in this process of gradually escalating what I was meant to be doing, trying to make me take on more and stretch, that there was a time I was working with this I was doing deep intensive work with small groups, and then they wanted me to expand and do these other bigger projects, but I didn't want to let go. And that was a huge lesson for me in my life was let go. I have to let go. And I have to, otherwise I don't make space for what's new. And I didn't want to let go. And so I kind of like cheated it. And I was like, well, I'll just taper it off. I will do fewer sessions with them. We'll kind of do it, a little bit less. And so I took on the new program before I really ended the old one, and it absolutely knocked me on my rear. That I was so exhausted that I would literally sleep between sessions. That it was like I couldn't even, yeah, literally I would do a session, I would sleep. I would do a session, I would sleep. It was way, and it taught me a lesson. And the only way that I was able to, so I had learned that if I manage my energy, like any way I can free up energy in my system at all is going to help me. So I thought, okay, well, I know that one of the things that takes a lot of energy is digestion. So if I'm not eating as often, that would free up energy. So I started intermittent fasting, which is like a fancy way of
Mm.
saying I skipped breakfast. I just didn't eat for that long. I left more rest, and that did that fixed it. So once I did that, I was able to stay awake between sessions. And then I'd never made that mistake again. I listened. When they told me they're like, move on, like that, I let it go and I move on. Cause yeah, it was really a tough time.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, and I'm so glad you speak to all those things, because it's such a important part of my life too, and you see people lean into this work, but when you look at their lifestyle choices they're making, it's actually complete polar opposite to what they're trying to achieve
Yeah.
within their own healing. I actually went and had my DNA tested as well just to ensure, but I was intuitively supporting that anyway, if that makes sense. But it was reassurance and the
Yes.
nuances and removing toxins from my life and
Yes.
sugar and all the things you mentioned, gluten. It's been
Mhm.
incredible. But
Yeah,
I
it makes a
naturally wanted to
huge
do it
difference.
though. Yeah, it's like you
Yeah,
naturally go that way in
yeah,
time as well. So it wasn't, it's never been a chore. But
yeah,
I do ponder on though, like with, we speak about the shifts that are happening at the moment, and this is a pivotal time in the history of humanity and that. But when you look out upon the world and look at the choices we're making through the food choices, the way the food industry is set up, the medical industry is set up, the financial, all this stuff that we have just slowly over the years allowed ourselves to seep into our life,
yeah,
consciously or unconsciously, what that's doing to us as individuals and we're
Yeah.
not even
Yeah.
aware of it. And then you've got these frequency changes
Yeah.
that are happening. You
I
know,
totally agree, and it is I think it would be I think the thing I love about talking about what you eat and what you put around you in terms of your spiritual journey is that it's so physical and it's so actionable. It's something anybody can see and do, and it's an easy way to raise your vibration. So for me, like I am now able to eat dairy and gluten, but my dreams are very, very clear with me if I can't eat too much gluten. They've shown me that when I eat gluten, I can handle it now. But my body, because gluten is such an like it's so such an irritant, it basically just encases it and allows it to pass through. But it slows my digestion down. So they showed me, yep, it doesn't. You don't get inflammation anymore, so you're okay. So if I want to have an occasional pizza, I could do it. But I'm just careful. Like at home, I'm pretty much gluten free, and I just have gluten when I'm out. But the freedom that gives me to go to restaurants is enormous. But same thing with it. I just the other day, like I was getting the full license on having dairy, but then they showed me they're like be picky about your dairy. Like make sure you're going organic. Make sure you're having what is it's all about the happiness level of the cows. Like they've got to be happy cows or you don't want to eat it. So they're showing me like, okay, you can do this, but and that's only because I healed the wounds that were
mm,
making me intolerant. But I still it's thinking about the energy. What is the life force? If you can, even if you think about what can you do on a daily basis to up the life force of your food. So shopping at farmers markets, getting the food that's fresher, or a simple one is like grow alfalfa sprouts or grow microgreens on your countertop. Like it's really easy to do. And that's like so full of life force because it's literally just sprouted and anybody could do it. You could do it in a little jar, you know what I mean? And it takes like no light even. It's super easy, but that and like you said, toxins in like your products that you're using. I even switched one time the angels told me about fabrics. And they said that the two best fabrics for energy are in terms of what sort of a frequency they're at is linen and wool by far, but they're at polar opposites. They literally are like at opposite sides of the spectrum. They're both really great. So you want to wear wool, you want to wear linen, but you don't want them woven into the same fabric because they cancel each other out and you end up at zero. And so, and then cotton is okay. Like organic cotton is like is low. It's not very much like linen and wool are like in the 3,000 something spectrum. They're really high vibe. Cotton is low. It's like in the I don't know, but it was low. Silk is one of the worst. Silk is terrible from a frequency perspective, and synthetics like are really bad. So, but silk, I was like, really? Because I think of silk as being a natural fiber, but then I realized, wait a minute, silk comes from a living being, and that's why. So I bought linen sheets. I slip on linen sheets. I try to wear wool. I try to wear linen. I do wear a lot of cotton, but at least cotton is neutral. And I try to be very conscious of if I'm going to put on a synthetic, I better really like it. Better be something really awesome. I'm not going to wear it.
so talk to me about the mother of creation.
Yeah.
Who is that?
Yeah, so she is the most amazing energy. It is just even thinking about her, it just lights me up. She's the mother of all souls. So she is, and she jokingly refers to herself as God's wife. So she is the energy of our universe comes from what I would call God or source. Please, God is my word, so please substitute with however you like to refer to that energy. But that energy as it flows through the mother of creation was given the ability or given the power from God to create structure out of that energy. So the energy flows from God. It's almost like God said, here's all the Lego bricks that you could ever want. Now create anything, but it has to boil down to a Lego brick. It has to boil down to that original shape. And that shape, in the way she said it, she said God taught her the structures and the forms that the universe would take according to what he had planned for this universe, and then she got to create it. And so that is what we think of as sacred geometry. That's the math that dictates our universe. And that's why we see these repeating patterns. We see these structures take form, and the seashell is the same shape as the universe. And she is yeah, she's it's been an amazing, like, the conversations I've had with her. have become, it's just deeper and deeper all the time. But the best thing about it is the more I learn from her, the more I realize that we are all of our answers, that everything she shows me or tells me, as I can almost always boil it back down to, if I was to look at, if I had a question and I said, how would my body answer that question, in the sense of, like, the idea about growth, like, what is the growth path of the human soul? It's the same as the breath. The breath is the answer, right? We have this expansion and contraction, expansion and contraction. So every answer is in our body. And so it's a long description to get into, like, her original moment. Like, the way she described it to me is the beginning, the very beginning is, imagine God sort of alone before God even exists, before God is even an idea. And then all of a sudden, God has consciousness with the question, the realization of I am. And that's the first moment of God consciousness. God becomes present with the moment of I am, I exist. But then the next question is, what am I? Right? What am I? And that's the second question of the universe. First question of the universe is really the statement I am, which is will. Second question is, what am I? That question separated God from himself, created a mirror image of God. And that mirror image of God is, so God is unity, God is all things. And if you ever look in a mirror, you see yourself. Say, for example, if you were to go look in a mirror right now, you can see yourself, but it is you in separation from yourself. And so if you hold up text, if you hold up words, it in a mirror, it reflects the words, but it shows them backwards, in reverse. It shows them inverted, right? So it's the same thing with God looking in the mirror when he asks himself, because he's infinitely creative, what am I? He creates a separation of himself where he can see himself. But that separation, which is all that is separation. That's the reverse. The reverse of God, which is unity, is separation. So that first moment of separation is also, because it has all that God is, also contains the question of what am I? So immediately that initial reflection divides itself because it has the same question, what am I? And it becomes two halves. And I saw this very clearly in a dream where I saw this process of separation, and I saw the mirror form like two halves of a butterfly, and one was light and one was dark because they are in reverse one another. One is divine masculine energy, one is divine feminine energy. And the divine piece of that, the feminine piece of that, is the mother of creation. And so this began. And then from that, the next stage of the dream is I saw the entire body fill up with butterflies and they all flew away. And so it was this amazing understanding that from these two initial pieces of separation, this part of God, this separation from God that then separated into two halves, that then generated creation, which then populated the universe. And so, yeah, but so that's who she is. She is I guess, the left side of that butterfly.
Yeah, okay. And why now? Why is the the channeling coming through now? Like, specifically, is there a specific message she's been getting across? And
Yes.
what is that?
Yeah, the big reason is because we're going through this shift of consciousness, is that we have been in the process of going into the depth of separation, which has been very useful and very on purpose, which has been the idea of trying to get to truly answer that first question of what am I, right? That's the first question that we need to respond. And so the way we discover that is by isolating ourselves from one another to the point where all we hear or all we feel is ourself, right? So we go deeper and deeper and deeper into separation so that we can have more and more experiences, so that we can have a better and better understanding of what we are. And so we finally get to the point, the maximum point where we cannot divide ourselves any further, where we're separated as we can get. And that is the point that we're turning, which is where we are now, and coming back into unity. And she says, as we turn, that separation is the expression of our divine masculine. As we turn and come back, then she says, now you will remember me, which is her energy, the energy of reincorporation, the energy of unity, of bringing things back together again, back into unity and balance. That's her. So that is why she's back now, is because she says this is the moment of integration. And in the process of doing that, she's teaching us. So the same lessons that we are going through is the same lessons that she went through. So she had to explore, in the same way that God explored these energies in sequence, she explored these energies in sequence. And now we are exploring these energies in sequence. It's the process of growth. And so she's coming back to tell us, I went through this. This is what it is. This is what you're going through. This is what you're going to experience next. And this is mostly what she's channeling about. Much of what she's what's coming through is her teaching us, sharing with us where we are, helping us to see the bigger picture. This is where you are, and this is where you're going, and this is what it's going to be like, and this is how to do it. And it's a really different take. Like everything that we've like in our culture, in our world, we have all these stories about how to get ahead, right? And most of them are, work hard, play hard, and there's lots of stories about the sort of the alpha or type A behavior, and that's the way to success. And this has been truth, right? That has been a true thing. Not so in the new reality. We're moving into a brand new energy, and the things that worked in the past will no longer work because we're facing a totally different. We are in reverse from that. And rather than the idea which has been true, which is this concept of take action, and even the concept of manifestation, right? The way we were all taught in The Secret and all that stuff, and Esther Hicks and these amazing messages and channels that brought energy information through about this is how you are meant to create. That is the idea. Think about how much, as we're trying to, like the old story is, see it as if it already exists, feel it as if you're already there, and you're really you're focusing your energy to be in the frequency of what you want to match, right? But think about how much control is involved in that process, right? We're really trying to control and to meld and to craft our future through our feeling, through our thinking, even through our affirmations, all of it,
Mm.
right? It's a very focused. We're trying to manifest in this. Manifest looks like this, you know what I mean? In the old way, super not the new way. The new way is all about, it's all coming through the heart. It's about being. It's about learning to trust. It's like falling back into who we are to the degree that we trust that whatever is going to emanate from us is going to be our truth. And that we have to trust who we are deeply enough that we are willing to let that come. And it's not coming from wounding, it's coming from the now moment only. And that's much closer to where we're headed in the new reality.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
what comes to mind is that I always think about the individual, like the micro and the macro, and the
Yeah.
micro being the human, or you could even be like a cell in the body, but then the macro
Mhm.
is 50 trillion cells. And with us,
Yes.
we're a cell as a human,
Yes.
but
Yeah, like
collectively
a
is
cell,
the,
like we're in the body of God, right?
yeah,
And that's I see
exactly.
it the same way. I think the same thing, and cells divide, like they grow through mitosis and they split, and it's yeah, which is why I say you can always go back to the body to find the answers. Yeah, how
But
does a body grow? Through division.
yeah, and what's fascinating as well, though, is like when have an individual and that almost like that pressure cooker, the contractions in place or the expansion and stuff comes up is like the story and the meaning and what we impose upon it can be so very different to the actual wound that's wanting to shift, the energy that's wanting to release as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then it's never the same thing. And it's amazing how much our beliefs and stories and are governing our lives. But then I look at the collective, what's happening
Yeah.
at the moment, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
we're doing that.
That I agree with you, and I think of healing as like a spiral that we go through, and and we have to kind of
Mm.
move through the different layers of our energy. So when we get up kind of to the top of a system of energy, I find that's when I see people finally getting to the belief systems and the habits. The habits are like some of the last things to go. And so, but yeah, it's like it's there's all these different layers of the stack that we have to go through to try to finally clear ourselves of a particular pattern. But I actually look out into the world right now and I see all the chaos that's happening. And to me, I see it as an amazing sign that we are close, because this is in the same way that a human heals by stuff coming to the surface we have to go through it. We have to feel it. And that feeling is the integration through the heart chakra, which is how we finally integrate the lesson. And that is what's happening, and it's been going on. It's just like we are the frogs in the boiling pot where it just gets crazier and crazier. The level of crazy in the world is going up and up and up. This is more than anything, this is proof positive that we are on the right path, because as all these things rise, everybody's triggered. We're having to deal with the stuff that would normally be repressed. I sort of like imagine going back to a reunion before all this stuff was crazy in the world, and you're having a reunion and everybody's just able to stay on the surface and talk about the weather and talk about their pets and talk about things that nobody gets upset, and it's harmonious and everyone's getting along, and everything just stays buried. And then we go through the chaos in the world, and everybody goes to that same reunion, and emotions are raw, and everything's right on the surface, and conflict happens, and everybody's fighting, and nobody's getting along. And what's happening is all that garbage that needs to be gone through, that's always been there, right? It's not that it wasn't there before. It's just that it was hidden, and it's finally coming to the surface for integration. And so I see all of this, even though it's really hard, I see it as proof that we're on our way.
Yeah. How do you, or even what advice would you have? Because it's very easy to fall into the slipstream of fear and be pulled down into that contracted energy and supposed to that expansiveness that we're moving into. And I often feel into, oh, am I leaning into the expansiveness of myself, or am I getting pulled into that? And there's, that collective fear that is constantly just being projected
Yes.
out there, almost as
Yeah.
if it's wanting to maintain control, or if it's fear in its own death. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it can be hard to just let the light in and surrender to that.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's extremely difficult, and it's totally counterintuitive. Like our programming, like biological programming, fear keeps us alive. In the wild, if we were still living on the plains of the Serengeti with the lions and whatever, we would be, our fear helps us to live. It gives us that rush of adrenaline that helps you run away faster. So fear is deeply programmed into the physical body. But that is the part where we have to look and be observant of our fear and recognize that we are not the physical body. Recognize that fear is that physical thing that comes with, and yes, it has served us well, but in this case, it actually does not. Because as we are moving into the shift of consciousness, the our ability to hold that frequency of self-love and the acceptance of all that is actually opens the doorway to us having whatever it is that we need. It opens the doorway up to even, yes, absolute miracles. And that's been some of the incredible channelings that's come through from both the angels and she calls herself Isla, the mother of creation, because Isla, it represents the first two energies of the universe, which is really cool, will and love. Isla, which I think is kind of cool. But anyways, both of them have talked about this idea that as we move into this, and even if you can only hold the higher vibration for a minute, for 10 minutes, say it's only in meditation that you're able to get into that higher vibe, that's great. That's amazing. That's 10 minutes of you creating the new reality. Even if the rest of the day you're coping with anxiety, for the 10 minutes that you are in the great wah of peace, that counts. So it's every little bit counts. But I think we have to try to notice, to become extremely observant of when we step into fear. And a technique that I did that worked really well for me is I started a negative thought journal. And it's a hard practice because it really makes you see yourself. It's not very fun, but it really works. So it is any single time, you just, for the first couple days, carry it around, and then over time you won't need to bring it with you everywhere as much, because you notice how quickly you recognize that it's almost always very similar thoughts. So during the day, negative thought comes up, you write it, and just try to be very self-observant. Really watch yourself, write it down. At the end of the day, look at every single negative thought you've had and sit with each one and try to understand, why did I feel that? Like, why in that moment was I worried about scarcity? Why in that moment was I fearful for my physical safety? Like, what was happening underneath it? Like, was I really physically unsafe? That night when I ran around and double checked that all the doors were locked or whatever, like, was I really physically unsafe, or where did that fear come from? And to sit with it, even if you don't get all the answers right away, to continue that practice each night, and to go through the list. And what I found is that the negative thoughts, that it was not 50 negative thoughts, it was like two. It was like two. And then that becomes manageable, and you start to work with those thoughts and try to feel into what's underneath it. And is that rational? Wow, that thought is coming from this, like, this sort of gloomy thing that, like, what if someone breaks in? And I remember my dad when I was, young, and every time I went everywhere, he'd be like, someone got raped there. That place you're going to, someone who looked just like you, who was the same size as you, got raped there last week. You know what I mean? He would try to scare me, so I would be careful. And that still is in my head somewhere. And I had to be like,
Mm.
okay, take that. And that is not mine. And I graciously give that back. And so it's that, I think it's becoming self-observant about and by the way, he tried to scare me because he loved me. You know what I mean? He was trying to keep me safe. I understand. I'm not saying that out of judgment. but it also is not in service of me trying to stay in my highest vibration. But yeah, but the negative thought journal is powerful, and it is a difficult practice in the sense that it, like I said, it does make you see yourself, but you will be shocked if you can boil it down to 2, 3, even 4 negative thoughts. Then every time you have it, you're like, there it is again, and it's gone. And so it really settles things down amazingly well.
Yeah, it diffuses that thought feeling loop. Yeah, no, it's
Yes, yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. Just as we kind of move into the end of the podcast, Anne, but it's 2026, like it's amazing. And what do you, what do you see or have through the channeling or heard, or like where are we in the epicenter of this change right now? Is it like this year, next year, the year after? Like there's so many thoughts and opinions and different
yeah.
ways of framing it that's going on at the moment. I find the whole thing fascinating, even the fact that we just want to know the unknown as humans as well. At the moment it's
Yeah.
unknown, it's scary, you
That
know?
is that is part of the fear thing too, isn't it?
Mm.
And the angels have given me a ton of messages about what's coming, and that the reason they do that is not to create fear. People worry about if we talk about it, are we creating it? My understanding is none of what they've shared, it's all baked into the plan. Like all of these events need to happen because they are guiding us into the higher state of consciousness. That there are many structures on the earth right now that are locking us in place, in the same way that, like, imagine if you think about somebody say that there's somebody out there, somebody maybe here listening in today to our conversation, who is meant to be a healer or meant to be working in spirit in some way, but they have a 9 to 5 job that they feel like they really need because it pays the bills, and they are going to stay at that job because what will they do if they don't have that job? And it becomes a prison, it becomes a cage where, and it's preventing them from actually living the life they're meant to be or meant to have. And then what if all of a sudden they get laid off from that job and they don't have it anymore, and they think it's a terrible thing, right? And they're just like, oh my gosh, and where are my angels, and nobody's supporting me, and I've lost this job. But then within a couple months, all of a sudden they are guided, they are led to the course they're going to take or with the training they're going to get to become a healer, and they start this whole new life that's actually on their path. When that's just a microscopic example of what I'm talking about, but now apply that to the whole world, to the structures of our world. That maybe the banking system, maybe the, government systems, and all these things that we think that we actually need are in fact cages that are preventing us from living in freedom. They're cages that are preventing us from having abundance, that are preventing us from having equality in the world. So the messages that I've gotten, and there have been tons about, there's significant events. Some of them have already come to pass. Some of them are happening right now. And yeah, I feel like we are in the thick of it. That some of these, the angels don't usually give me timings, but they did say that there's a chunk of these things that are going to be happening within the next year. So I think 2026 is, and I think right now we're headed into a hot spot economically. But I have this book. This book has a compilation of all of those messages. It's called What's Coming Next. So if you want to know what's coming next, it's all in here. And it describes it, and it is kind of cool actually. There are, for every message there's a QR code that takes you back to the YouTube video where there's the
Ah,
channeling
the
as
channeling.
well as a breakdown, because the way the angels talk is kind of, the mother of creation is much clearer. She talks more like a human. The angels don't. The angels are amazing because the angels see through like this multi-dimensional lens. They see all things at once. So when they talk, they will choose words that mean more than one thing. That they will pick a word, and it seems like, and it will jump out at me as I'm going through the message afterwards, that the word has like 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 meanings, and they mean all of them because they see all things at once. So breaking it down adds a ton of dimension because it's like they see everything as this like rotating cube, and they are talking about all. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. Mother creation doesn't do that. She doesn't do the multidimensional words. The angels do. So I always do a breakdown out of after every message to try to kind of pull apart all those pieces, which is always fascinating.
Yeah, no, thank you. I love the QR code idea, by the way. That's great.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's very cool.
it's worked out really well, really, really well.
I bet. Yeah. Just before we wrap it up, is there anything you want to leave the listeners to ponder on? Like we've covered a lot of ground today in a short space of time, but is there anything you want to add to finish?
I would say that the thing we're trying to get to is trusting ourselves. Like that's the biggest movement we're trying to achieve individually, I think, is this idea of trying to go into letting ourselves be ourselves and not editing ourselves, not judging ourselves, not holding ourselves back. And there's nothing harder. Like it is so weird that the hardest thing to do is to just let ourselves be free. But freedom is the key energy that's needed for us to reach the shift of consciousness, that we have to give ourselves freedom and we have to give freedom to everyone else. We have to let ourselves be fully in our truth and we have to allow others to do the same. That freedom is what then generates the new field of the new earth, which comes from inside of us. So that's the number one thing. Can you allow yourself to be a little bit more free? And every little bit counts. It's not all or nothing, right? Every little bit adds up.
Absolutely. For some reason, I just had an image of Mel Gibson from Braveheart there, right at the end there, being
Yeah.
free. For some,
I love it.
but
I love it.
where can I send people? I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes to your work, Anne. But where's the
Thank you
best place
so
to
much.
send people?
Yeah, everything is under my name to keep it simple. My website is anntucker.com. My YouTube is Ann Tucker. My biggest healing program is actually starting very soon, Soul Convergence, which is my main healing program. I only offer it twice a year. And it is deep, deep and beautiful work of integration. And that starts February 7th. So yeah, so love to have anybody come and join.
Beautiful. Anya, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate our conversation today. Thank you for all you
Fantastic
do.
conversation. Thank you, Guy. Love it.
Thanks, my love.